I am Evelyn Carter, 62 years old, a widow, and raising 4 grandchildren who never asked for this kind of life. Their laughter used to fill this small house, but now their voices carry hunger and questions I can't answer. Every night I sit at the kitchen table, bills spread out like a storm I can't outrun. The electric company, the hospital, the landlord, every envelope feels heavier than my hands can hold. I whisper prayers I'm not sure anyone hears. My body is tired, my back bent from years of working 2 jobs, then 3. My skin, dark and lined with time, carries the story of every sacrifice I ever made, and yet it feels like none of it was enough. In the next room, the children sleep close together, too thin for their age. Lily, the oldest, tries to act grown, comforting the little ones when I cannot. Caleb's questions break me. Grandma, when will things get better? Sophie clings to my arm as if she knows I'm slipping away. And Ethan, he is only 4. He cries when his stomach hurts, not knowing the world should never be this cruel to a child. I tell them tomorrow will be different. I tell them we'll be okay. But the truth presses on my chest. Tomorrow will bring the same hunger, the same debts, the same silence I cannot break. And deep down, I know I am running out of choices. This morning began like so many others, with the sound of small footsteps searching for something I no longer have to give. Lily opened the cupboard first, her thin hands moving cans around as if maybe something had appeared overnight. Caleb checked the fridge, standing on his toes, his hopeful face falling when he saw the empty shelves. Sophie followed behind them, asking quietly, "Grandma, what's for breakfast?" Ethan just rubbed his eyes, too young to understand why his brother and sisters kept looking in places that held nothing. I stood in the doorway, watching them pretend to be strong for one another. My heart twisted. There was no cereal, no eggs, not even a slice of bread left. The last piece had gone to Ethan last night, and I had told the others I wasn't hungry. The truth is, I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I wanted to tell them something comforting, but the words got stuck in my throat. How do you explain to children that love cannot fill an empty stomach? That all my prayers have not been enough to keep hunger from our door? I walked to the counter and picked up my wedding ring, the last thing of value I owned. The gold was scratched, the stone small, but it carried a lifetime. My husband had slipped it on my finger when we were both so young, believing we'd build a future no debt collector could touch. He's gone now, and all I have left of him is this ring and the children. Lily noticed it in my hand. Her eyes widened and her lips trembled, but she didn't say a word. She just looked at me as if she understood what I was about to do. That afternoon I walked into the pawn shop and placed my ring on the counter. My fingers shook as I let it go. The man behind the glass barely looked at me before pushing a few bills across the counter. It wasn't much. Enough for bread, milk, maybe some rice. Enough for one more day. When I came back home, the children rushed toward me. Their joy at seeing a bag of groceries felt like a knife in my chest, because I knew this was only a temporary mercy, and tomorrow the cupboards would be empty again. I was folding laundry when it came, the kind of knock that makes your stomach drop before you even move. The children froze. Lily looked at me, her eyes wide, as if she already knew who it was. I told them to stay in their room. My hands trembled as I opened the door. Mr. Harlan, the landlord, stood there in his pressed suit, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. He didn't bother with greetings. "Mrs. Carter, you're 3 months behind. I can't keep letting this slide," I tried to explain, my voice barely above a whisper. "Please, just a little more time. My husband's medical bills, the children. I'm doing everything I can." His face didn't soften. "I understand your situation, but I have a business to run. If I don't have the rent by the end of the week, I'll have no choice but to start the eviction process." I wanted to argue, to remind him that we'd lived in this house for years, that I always paid on time until life knocked us down. But the words stayed locked inside me. Pride and fear tangled in my chest. When he walked away, he left more than just his footsteps. He left the weight of a deadline I could never meet. I closed the door quietly, resting my back against it, trying to hold myself upright. From the hallway, I heard Caleb's small voice. "Grandma, are we going to have to leave?" I swallowed hard and forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Not if I can help it. But that night as I lay in bed, I could still see the clipboard in Mr. Harlan's hand. And in my heart, I knew the walls of this house might not protect us much longer. Sunday morning, I dressed the children in the cleanest clothes we had left. The hems were worn, shoes scuffed, but I wanted them to walk into church with dignity. Church had always been a place of comfort for me, but lately even the pews felt heavier, like God himself was watching me struggle and staying silent. Pastor Williams greeted us at the door, his warm smile fading when he saw the shadows in my eyes. He took my hand in both of his, calloused and steady. "You've been carrying too much, Evelyn," he said softly. I nodded, unable to speak. During the service, I bowed my head, but my prayers were fractured whispers. "Lord, please, just one more chance. Please don't let these children suffer for my failures." Afterward, when the crowd had thinned, Pastor Williams pulled me aside. His voice was low, almost a whisper meant only for me. "Sometimes God asks us to make choices that break our own hearts, choices we never thought we could live with." I froze. His words cut deeper than he could know. Did he see inside me? Did he already know the thoughts I was trying to bury? He squeezed my shoulder gently. "Whatever you decide, Evelyn, don't let shame convince you you're alone. Even Jesus carried a cross that wasn't his to bear." I walked out of the church with the children holding my hands, their faces lifted in trust. But Pastor's words echoed in my chest. Choices that break our own hearts. That night, as I tucked Sophie into bed, she asked me, "Grandma, why did Pastor say God gives us hard things?" I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Because sometimes love costs more than we can pay." And as I closed the door, I wondered how much more I could give before I was completely empty. The letter came folded in a thin white envelope, the kind that carries more weight than its paper should. Inside was an appointment slip from the county office. "Mandatory meeting with caseworker." My stomach tightened as I read it. A week later, I sat in a cramped office across from a young woman in a gray blazer. Her nameplate read, Amanda Pierce. She had kind eyes, but her voice was clipped, professional, practiced. "Mrs. Carter," she began, flipping through my file. "We're concerned about your situation. Raising 4 children alone at your age with no income. It's unsustainable." I clenched my hands in my lap. "They're all I have, and I'm all they have. I'll find a way." She sighed, folding her hands over the file. "There are resources, yes, but sometimes the most responsible thing is to consider alternatives." "Alternatives?" I repeated, my chest tightening. Her words came carefully, like she was stepping over glass. "Temporary foster care, just until you can get back on your feet. The children would be placed in safe homes with meals, heat, stability." I felt the blood drain from my face. My voice cracked. "You're asking me to give away my grandchildren." "Not give away," she said gently, though the firmness never left her tone. "Just allow them a chance at security. Right now you're running yourself into the ground, and it isn't enough." I shook my head, biting back the tears that threatened to spill. "They are my blood. I won't let them go." Amanda's expression softened, but her words were sharp. "Sometimes love means letting go, Mrs. Carter. Think about it." When I walked out of that office, the air outside felt colder than winter itself. I held the children's hands tightly, afraid someone might snatch them from me then and there. That evening, as I was washing dishes, I heard a soft voice behind me. Lily stood in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Grandma, you wouldn't let them take us, would you?" I froze, the dish slipping from my hand into the sink. I turned to her, forcing strength into my voice. "No, baby, I'd never let anyone take you." But inside, my heart was cracking, because part of me knew someone out there believed that might be the only way. I opened my purse and poured everything onto the kitchen table. A few coins clattered against the wood, rolling to the edge before stopping. When I counted it all, I realized I didn't even have enough for a gallon of milk. The children watched me closely, their eyes too wise for their years. I hated that they could read the truth on my face. I went to the bedroom and opened the small wooden box I had kept hidden for years. Inside lay the last pieces of my life before everything fell apart. My husband's watch, a pair of earrings he gave me for our 25th anniversary, and the locket that had belonged to my daughter, their mother. Inside it was a picture of her holding Lily as a baby. Sophie saw me holding it and gasped, "Grandma, not Mama's necklace." Her little hands clutched at the air as if she could stop me. My throat tightened. I wanted to tell her I would never, ever part with it. But the empty cupboards echoed louder than her plea. At the pawn shop, the man behind the counter eyed the items with indifference, tapping numbers into his calculator. When he slid the bills toward me, I felt my stomach sink. It was barely enough to buy groceries for a week. Still, I tucked the money into my purse, knowing I had traded away the last tangible pieces of the people I had loved most. That night I placed food on the table: bread, beans, rice, a small carton of milk. The children cheered as if it were a feast. Ethan clapped his little hands, his face glowing with joy. I forced myself to smile, but inside, the ache hollowed me out. They were happy for now. But what would I sell next week? As I cleared the table, Lily slipped her hand into mine and whispered, "Thank you, Grandma." Her gratitude was a knife, because I knew tomorrow hunger would return, and with it, the question I could no longer silence. How much more could I give before there was nothing left? It was late afternoon when I carried the laundry basket down the steps of our building. Mrs. Delgado, my neighbor from across the hall, was sitting outside her door, knitting with her hands moving slow, steady, like time itself couldn't rush her. She looked up at me with those sharp, knowing eyes. "Evelyn," she said softly, "you've lost more weight. Don't tell me it's nothing. I can see it." I tried to laugh it off, but my voice caught in my throat. She didn't push. Instead, she set her knitting aside and patted the chair next to her. "Sit with me a minute." I lowered myself beside her, the basket at my feet. For a long moment, we just sat in silence, two old women listening to the world move on without us. Then she spoke, her voice low, trembling like it carried ghosts. "You think you're the first to sit awake at night wondering how to feed children? Evelyn, I was you once, 40 years ago." I turned to her, startled. She nodded, her dark eyes filling with something heavy. "I had 3 babies, and no money. Their father disappeared and the world didn't care. I begged for work, begged for help, but no one listened. Finally, I made a choice." My chest tightened. What choice? Her knitting needles lay still in her lap. She whispered, "I gave one of them away, to a family with money. Told myself she'd have a better life. And maybe she did. But I never saw her again." I couldn't breathe. The weight of her words sank into me, pressing on my ribs, my lungs, my soul. Mrs. Delgado wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, forcing her voice steady. "People will judge you no matter what you do. But the hunger, the cold, the crying, those things don't judge, Evelyn. They just destroy. Sometimes the hardest thing is to choose which pain you can live with." I stared at my hands, the skin wrinkled, veins rising like roots. Her confession had pierced me deeper than she knew. When I stood to leave, my legs felt heavy, my body trembling. That night, as the children slept, her words haunted me. I gave one of them away, and for the first time, I whispered into the darkness, maybe that's the only way left. Winter came early that year. The wind pushed through the cracks in the windows, biting into our skin no matter how many blankets I piled on the children. The old heater had gone silent weeks ago, and I didn't have the money to fix it. That night, I woke to the sound of coughing. Caleb lay curled on the mattress, his body shivering so violently I thought he might break apart. I held him close, rubbing his thin arms, whispering, "Hold on, baby, just hold on." But the truth was, I had nothing left to give him. No medicine, no heat, not even enough food to keep his little body strong. In the morning, Lily tried to make a game of sharing the last piece of bread, pretending she wasn't hungry so the younger ones could eat. I watched her break it in 3, giving each crumb to Sophie and Ethan, while she smiled through the ache in her stomach. That kind of sacrifice should never fall on a child. By midday, Caleb fainted in the hallway. His small frame crumpled to the floor, his eyes rolling back for just a second. Panic tore through me. I lifted him in my arms, his weight frighteningly light, and laid him on the couch while the other children cried. That was the moment I felt something inside me shatter. The debts, the hunger, the cold, I could carry them. But seeing my grandson's body give out in front of me broke whatever strength I had left. I sat at the table that evening, the children huddled together under the blankets, and stared at the telephone. The social worker's card lay beside it, her name written in bold black letters, Amanda Pierce. My hands trembled as I reached for it. I told myself it was only a call, only words. But deep down, I knew this would not be just a conversation. This would be a turning point. I dialed the number, my voice shaking as I spoke. "Miss Pierce, it's Evelyn Carter. I need to talk." When I hung up, my body felt numb. The children were still awake, whispering to each other in the dark. I lay down beside them, forcing my arms around their small bodies, knowing that soon I might have to let go. The day came gray and heavy, as if the sky itself knew what I was about to do. I dressed the children slowly, buttoning their coats, smoothing their hair, memorizing every line of their faces. Each touch felt like a goodbye I could not speak out loud. At the county office, the walls smelled of disinfectant and paper. Amanda Pierce waited for us, her folder already open. She spoke softly, like she thought kindness could soften the blade. "Mrs. Carter, the children will be placed with foster families who can give them what they need. Warm beds, meals, schools. This doesn't have to be permanent." Her words floated around me, but I couldn't hear them clearly. My eyes were fixed on my grandchildren, my whole world sitting in worn-out coats on plastic chairs, their small legs swinging, not understanding. Then it happened. Amanda slid the papers across the desk. I picked up the pen. My hand trembled so hard the ink smudged as I wrote my name. Lily lunged forward, her voice breaking. "Grandma, don't let go! Please, don't let them take us!" Her words sliced through me. Caleb's arms wrapped around my waist. Sophie began to cry, and little Ethan clung to my leg with all his strength. I bent down, holding them as tightly as I could, breathing them in like it was the last air I'd ever have. "I love you," I whispered into their hair. "Don't you ever forget that. I love you more than anything in this world." But love wasn't enough. Love couldn't stop hunger. Love couldn't pay rent. Love couldn't keep them warm. Amanda's voice was gentle but firm. "It's time." I pried their small fingers off mine one by one, each release a wound I knew would never heal. Their cries echoed in the room, but I forced myself to stand, my legs shaking beneath me. When the door closed behind them, the silence was unbearable. My arms ached, empty, as if part of me had been torn away. I walked out of that building alone, the cold wind cutting across my face. Every step felt like betrayal, and in that moment I wondered if my grandchildren would ever understand that the cruelest choice I had ever made was born out of love. When I opened the front door, the silence hit me first. No laughter, no arguments over toys, no footsteps running across the floorboards, just silence. I set my purse on the counter and stood still, waiting as if the children might suddenly rush in from another room, but there was nothing. The small shoes still lined the hallway, their laces untied. Sophie's doll lay on the couch, its head crooked, waiting for her little hands to fix it. Caleb's jacket was tossed carelessly over the chair, like he had meant to come back for it. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of them, but not the sound of their voices. I sank onto the couch and pressed my face into Sophie's doll, breathing in the faint smell of her skin. The ache in my chest spread until I thought it might crush me. For years I had struggled against debt, against hunger, against the cold. I had bent my back and broken my body to keep this home alive for them. But now the house was empty, and all that effort felt like dust slipping through my fingers. I walked into the bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept my husband's photograph. His face looked back at me, smiling in a way that felt like another lifetime. I touched the frame with shaking hands. "I tried," I whispered. "God knows I tried, but I couldn't save them." The walls closed in around me. The silence was heavier than any hunger, colder than any winter. It was the sound of absence, of choices that could never be undone. I lay on the floor, the photograph pressed to my chest, and for the first time in my life, I wished I could vanish too. The house felt like a museum of their absence, each room a display of moments I could no longer touch. I went through their things slowly, like I was moving through a life someone else had lived. I folded Caleb's small shirts and placed them in a box. I wrapped Sophie's doll in a clean shirt and tucked it away. Lily's sweater smelled faintly of her, a mix of soap and the small sweetness that children carry. I pressed it to my face until the scent blurred the rest of the day into something softer. I sat at the kitchen table with a single lamp, casting a circle of light over the paper in front of me. My hand trembled as I opened the Bible where I had slipped the social worker's paperwork. I found the small Bible easy to carry, its pages thin like old skin. There between the Psalms and the Proverbs, I pushed back the corner of a page and reached for a blank sheet I had kept folded for months. I had tried to imagine what to say 1,000 times, words that would make everything right again, but ink is a poor substitute for the sound of a child's laugh, and letters cannot stitch back the small, ordinary things that make up a childhood. Still, I had to leave them something that would tell the truth when I could not be there to say it myself. My pen scratched against the paper. I wrote slowly, each sentence a small theft from what I wanted to give them in person. My dears, if you are reading this, then my arms are empty and my voice is far. I want you to know before anything else that I loved you with a size of love you could not measure. I kept you close in every breath I took. I held you through nights that felt endless and through mornings that began without enough light. There were days I failed you. There were days my pride kept me from asking for help sooner. I'm sorry for every time I put my fear ahead of your needs. I'm sorry that I could not always make the world kind for you. Please do not let my mistakes become the measure of who you are. You are brave, Lily with your quiet strength, Caleb with your fierce questions, Sophie with your endless tenderness, Ethan with your wide, trusting eyes. Remember that the size of your heart is what will carry you forward, not the number of things you own. I tried to protect you. I made a choice because I believed in the raw place of my heart that it would give you a chance at warmth, at full bellies, at a school that could teach you beyond what I could. I know there will be days you will hate me. There will be nights when you want to find me and scream at the unfairness of it all. Hate me if you must. One day, perhaps, you will see the shape of love in my wrong choices. Find each other. Hold each other close. Tell stories about us, about Mama, about your laughter in the kitchen, about the little things that made us a family. Do not let the hard parts be the only story. Be fierce for one another. Forgive when you can. Fight when you must. Live. If you ever doubt that someone out there loved you fiercely, open this Bible and read these words again. I will be watching from whatever place I can, and I will be proud of every step you take. Always, Grandma. When I folded the letter, my fingers were stiff. I tucked it into the Bible carefully, pressing it into a place I knew Lily might find when she returned to these rooms someday. I wanted the letter to be a warm thing to hold, not a cold accusation of my failure. After I hid the paper, I moved through the house one last time. I didn't know what would come next, whether the children would find their way back to me after placement, whether the foster homes would be kind, whether life would teach them to trust again. Those uncertainties sat like stones in my stomach. I sat by the window and watched the street below, where people moved about their ordinary days, lovers holding hands, a man walking his dog, a bus rumbling past. The world kept turning as if my heart had not fractured on the kitchen chair. That thought hurt in a new way. I did not sleep much that night. When dawn came, I brewed a small pot of coffee and sat with the cup between my hands, its heat grounding me. There was a quiet vow in me I could not shake. I would get up every morning for them. I would find work, any work, crawl back from the edge if it took all I had. They would not be left to fate alone because I had made a choice. I would bend and break and rebuild if I had to. Before I left the house to do whatever the day demanded, I opened the Bible and smoothed the page where the letter sat. I traced the fold with a thumb and whispered, "Forgive me." The words came out small and unsteady, but I meant them. I walked out the front door with my purse, my back aching, but my steps a little steadier than they had been when the house was full, and I felt powerless. The letter was hidden, the promise was made, and somewhere inside me, a stubborn hope kept time with the clock. Days turned into weeks, and the house never filled again. The silence became my closest companion, though it never offered comfort. I walked the same streets, passed the same shops, nodded at the same neighbors, but inside me, something had broken in a way that could never be fixed. I saw the children once from across the street. They were stepping out of a car with strangers, coats zipped up, shoes clean, their hands holding new bags. They looked healthier already, their faces less hollow. My chest tightened with both relief and agony. They didn't see me, and maybe that was for the best. I stood there, hidden in the shadows, tears burning my eyes. Part of me wanted to run to them, to hold them, to beg for forgiveness. But the other part knew that my presence would only reopen wounds they were just beginning to heal. So I stayed still. I watched. I whispered a prayer they couldn't hear, and I made myself walk away. At night, when the loneliness pressed hardest, I opened my Bible and touched the folded letter. My vow was written there as much as it was carved into my bones. They would never know hunger like that again, not if it meant I had to sacrifice every last piece of myself. Love had demanded a betrayal I would never stop carrying. But it was also the reason I kept going. Even in silence, even in absence, I chose to live so that maybe, someday, my grandchildren could understand that every cruel decision had been made in the name of love. And if the world ever judged me, if they whispered my name with pity or condemnation, let them, because only I knew the weight of the vow I made. They may hate me now, but one day they will know. I gave them up because I refused to give them nothing. Would you forgive Evelyn's choice? Share your thoughts below. And if her story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, And join us for more stories that reveal the silent sacrifices behind everyday lives.